אנשים באים, עושים...
Shalom, shalom, shalom. Baruchim habayim. Welcome. We will begin and very shortly. We just need to get all the recording ready. Okay, now we're ready. Welcome. I am Rabbi Chasya Uriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Hamachon LeKedusha, here in the Galil in Israel, Kehilat Mussar Mindfulness, the community that engages in Mussar from the Jewish tradition and mindfulness coming out of Theravada Buddhism of the Dharma, where we learn from these ancient traditions, from our ancestors and from God, how to be on this path towards holiness, to learn from one another, to create community, to strengthen each other, to make the world a better place. I'm delighted that you're joining us. Today is Motzei Shabbat, after the Sabbath, Saturday, October 19th, around 10:30 at night here. Wherever you're located in the world, welcome. We are live streaming. You can meet us on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. You can also meet us on our blog on the website at kehilatmussar.com. We're also live streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, wherever you can see us live. And of course, you can also join on our Zoom link and page. Delighted to be here with you. This is our weekly public offering where we dive into the weekly Torah portion in order to learn from our ancestors and God how to apply the teachings so that not only are they meaningful to our lives today, which they should be and they are, but also because of this whole past year and nowadays since the genocide of October 7th, 2023 in Israel, how we are coping, how we are healing, how we are dealing with this, that these teachings are here to strengthen us along this journey. So you might see that I'm in a different location right now. I'm recording elsewhere for this 47th sitting together. We are entering Parashat Shoftim, okay, the Judges, where we're going to look at what is it that we have to learn here from Shoftim. Before we begin, our usual practice is to go through our kavanot, our intentions for today's session, as you know. If you're new, we'll enter our intentions, we'll go through a teaching, and then we'll enter our mindfulness meditation practice together to really internalize what it is that I want us to get out of today's session. So for those of you following along, you're going to want to enter the book of Deuteronomy, which is known as Devarim. It's chapter 16, verse 18. Okay, so Perek Tet Zayin, and Yud Chet is the Pasuk, and chapter 21, 9. So Kaf Aleph is the Perek, and the Pasuk that it ends with is Tet. So Shoftim, that's where we will enter today and what we want to cover. All right, our cover note. So usually if you're watching by video, usually I share the screen of what we are going to cover today. The cover note are the same as they are every year. I mean, every week, but I don't have that document with me because I am on vacation during Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Hag Sameach Modeim Lesimcha. So I'm going to say them orally. If you're listening by video on podcasts, you're going to hear me say them anyway. So it is our intention that we merit these intentions, these kavanot for our session, that we see this time together as an act of radical self-care, that we are strengthening our own souls in order to be of benefit to others in the future. We're also doing this to strengthen our relationship to others so that we can be a better conduit of God's good when they need us. And the final reason why we do this, which is our threefold, taking care of the self, our relationship with others, bearing the burden with others, and our relationship with God, the divine Hashem, however you define God or however you define that relationship. We're really doing this to strengthen that relationship with intention so we can be that vessel, that better conduit of God's good. So those are our kavanot, our intentions. I am delighted to be here with you. It's quite a blessing to be able to log in right now and just spend some time learning together. So SHOFTIM took place a while ago, well over a month and some weeks. It took place on September 7th, 2024. That was Dalid of Elul. So as you know, we're in Tishrei now, the Hebrew month of Tishrei. So it's some while ago. It was also last Hebrew year, Tav Shin Pei Dalid. We're now in Tav Pei Shin Hey. But we're still going to go through these. We're going to, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, make it through the book of Dvarim so we could start the new year together fresh. That is my intention, my hope for us. But if not, then, we'll do our best. It's been, as one would like to say, one hell of a year. One where we have not had the strength and ability to do things necessarily on time and to get things accomplished because of not only the genocide, but the ongoing wars with Iran and its proxies. So let's give the summary of SHOFTIM. SHOFTIM is the 5th parasha in the book of Deuteronomy, Dvarim. So it's already keeping up the whole kind of theme of Dvarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, is giving his final teachings, what he wants to pass on to Bnei Israel and our ancestors, and eventually to us. Okay, so this parsha focuses on leadership and justice. Bnei Israel must appoint shoftim, judges, and shotrim, officers. We are told a very important verse here, Sedek, Sedek tirdof. It means that you actually must pursue justice. Justice, justice, you shall run after, you shall chase after, you shall pursue, right? Working so hard to create justice that we are actually chasing it. You shall chase it. This is going to be very important to the teaching and what we want to cover and discuss today of what it means to create a people and society that where we are chasing justice, where it's a big part of how we operate on a daily basis, okay? So there's also a mitzvah, a commandment to listen to the judgments and Torah teachings of the Kohanim, of the priest, and of the Shoftim, of the judges. Whoever becomes a king, a melech of Bnei Israel, all the laws, basically, except for one, are basically telling him what he cannot do, what he shouldn't do, right? Which is that he may not own too much gold or silver, can't own too many horses, he's not to marry too many wives. A king needs to fear God, follow the Torah, and not raise his heart above everyone else. Bnei Israel must not listen. So this is totally asur to listen. Must not listen to sorcerers and false prophets. This is what comes up. They're to listen instead to these 4 leadership positions that we'll get into of what this chapter essentially covers, this parsha, because we're starting to see a real structure to the leadership of our ancestors, who they decided with God and God's help, how they're going to organize a rule of law and how to live by it, okay? So one of the things that comes up in the Torah portion is that if somebody kills somebody by accident, what we call manslaughter today, They have to move to a Ir Miklat, right? We call a Miklat today one of the safety rooms that we run into when Iran and its proxies are sending missiles to us to try to kill us, citizens of Israel. So, civilians of Israel. These are cities of refuge, so we may call it our Miklat refuge, right? Judges need to rule based on honest testimony from more than one witness. And when it's time for war, which we're in right now, not everyone has to fight according to the Torah. Before battle, Bnei Israel should propose peace. They must make every effort not to harm people who are not soldiers or natural resources. And if somebody is mysteriously killed in the middle of nowhere, the leaders of the nearest town perform a very special ritual called Eglat Arufa in order to absolve themselves of responsibility of the spilled blood, because everything in the Torah, if there's spilled blood, has to be accounted for. So that's a general summary of what goes on in this Torah portion. I'm going to provide you a little bit more summary, what I think is very important for us to understand what goes on, and then we'll be able to move on. So, as I said, this whole weekly Torah portion, Shoftim Judges, deals with the responsibility of public officials. It begins here all the way actually until well into the next Torah portion of Kitetse of chapter 21:9. And it introduces four main types of human authorities: judges, kings, priests, Kohanim, and prophets, Nevi'im. Nothing is said of the elders. Now, you may recall that both in Egypt, but also in the Midbar, in the wilderness, elders played a key role. They're just assumed to be whom you turn to, not only for wisdom, but for making decisions about how the society will be ruled. But nothing is said here. And so most scholars today think that that might be because their authority was traditional and taken for granted. We don't know. Unlike a constitution, the text does not give a thorough definition of their offices and duties, but actually emphasizes broad principles. This is very clear in the Torah in general with laws, but this is about their specific duties. Prominence is given to the limits established by God and the rights of each authority. So we're not only defining who's going to be the leader and broad principles of their leadership, but we're setting up a clear understanding for all of Bnei Israel to know and understand that there are to be limits to all stations of authority. It's supposed to be shared authority and leadership, and that everyone has a limit. No one can be the dictator or the sole authority over everyone else or all other offices. This is important. By dispersing authority and prestige among the various officials and limiting their powers, this is about limiting power. Entrusting them with power, of course, but limiting power. Dvarim in this parsha in particular seeks to prevent the development of single strong focus of prestige and power, as I said earlier. As I said, the limitations are made known public and are an important and actual original feature of the Torah. We don't find this in the ancient Near East. Otherwise, really lays the ground for public supervision and criticism of human authorities, prevents them from gaining absolute authority and prestige. As you will find as you study Jewish history over the past, 3,000, 4,000 years, there's not one leader. There's not like Sinwar of Gaza or Nasrallah of Hezbollah, or like a sultan of the Ottoman Empire, or any of the leaders that we see who are clearly being dictators, to the point where they are killing and causing genocide to their own population to maintain that prestige and power. That does not exist and hasn't in Jewish society and in the state of Israel today as a modern nation state since 1940. Excuse me. Okay, so the last thing I will say is that prophets, the Nevi'im, at least in the book of Deuteronomy and Devarim, enjoy a really special privileged position. They exercised particular power to admonish kings and officials and priests, as well as people, for their moral and religious sins. And they're given quite privilege and authority in the book of Shoftim, in the parasha, and also in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, that is our summary. I just want to see what else I want to quickly share with you before I go in what I wanted to take from this that's important for us today. Okay, give me one thing. I have my notes here. Include about preparing the army at the end. Okay, this is something that's been coming up for me all along that I've been having a hard time with, given the wars that we're in right now. Okay, so one of the key teachings that I pointed out here today is that and actually what Rabbi Pliskin and other rabbis learned from this text is that we have a chiyuv, an obligation to accept the leaders that have been elected and appointed, respecting the office, respecting the prestige and power of the office. Doesn't mean there isn't room for admonishing, as we see with the prophets. Actually, that's an obligation. But that there should be this accepting of the leaders that you have at the time. Instead of, sometimes people live in wishful thinking, instead of in the reality of what's present to us right here and right now. So they'll be thinking, oh, if we only had X leader of the past, whatever it might be, right? It could be Golda Meir, it could be Moshe Rabbeinu, it could be any of the past leaders. If we only had them, then this would be better, right? Or even more extreme, if we absolutely did not have who we had, now everything would be better. So you have some people who are so anti-Netanyahu that they think anything would be better than him. It's the not accepting what's present before them, that this person has been elected in, and that this is who we have right here and right now in this moment. And so that's, of course, looking to honor and strengthen the shared power of the different offices, and really using this Torah portion as a model of how we can move forward with all this. So the other key thing that comes out of the teachings is this idea that regardless of how wise you are, and in today's society, that would be not only wisdom and Torah and learning, but having a master's or a doctorate degree, seen as someone who's highly educated. So no matter how wise you are, if you are biased, which we all have some bias, right? But in this case, if you're really clearly and strongly biased, right, you will not be objective, and you will not be able to see the total truth. This teaching comes out of the Torah prohibiting a judge from taking any bribe, where we learn that bribery blinds the eyes of wise men, right? This is coming from chapter 16, verse 19. I just want to say that, and as a reminder, because I think, and this is probably due to class issues also playing out in society, but this idea that if someone's educated, then they know better, and will be open to reason and to knowledge and facts. I just want to remind everyone that I think it was close to 90% of those who were involved in the Nazi propaganda, and the final solution were those who held PhDs from the top German universities. These are your elite, wise, educated people who became so full of indoctrination and seeking of greed, hatred, and delusion, right? This blinded by their bias that they were willing to engage in genocide and use their prestige and power and their education to force that and pass that on. We even see this today in American universities, thanks to Professor Shai Davidai. If you're not aware of him and his work, please do look him up. He's an assistant professor at Columbia University, Israeli-American, who has been fighting along with many other people at American universities to really point out the anti-Jewish, anti-Israel hatred going on in campuses, funded by Qatar, funded by Muslim Brotherhood, and just the ignorance and propaganda and indoctrination happening. And, he's the first to point out the people that are most speaking out against Jews and coming with hatred towards Jews in Israel are these other professors at Columbia University, people with doctorates, with PhDs, who are considered wise and educated. Okay, so always be clear that when you listen to someone, are they able to question? Are they able to listen? Are they able to look at the nuanced reality on the ground? Are they able to face things the way they are instead of looking at things how they want them to be? So back to justice. Justice you shall pursue, you shall chase after. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. It's an amazing statement, right? This whole idea that establishing a society where it's and a rule of law, that its guiding principle is justice. We'll find in the next Torah portion in Kehilat say that that's balanced with rachamim, with compassion. This power being divided by these separate groups and specific duties and responsibilities. And each branch is limited in how it operates by its prescriptive rules. The goal to build a firm foundation for a just society. Every person is subject to the same rules and entitled to the same justice. And finally, really important teaching along with this is that even those who are the most highly educated, revered, put into these positions of power, like the Shoftim, like the judges, in a case that is too baffling for them, for instance, they are to appeal and turn to the Leviim, the Levitical priests in Jerusalem. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 8 through 10. They are to seek out other expert opinion. They're not to just think that they have to have all the answers and pretend that they do. That's delusion. It's also a form of greed, of trying to appear as if, in some ways, that you're not really human, right? But this ongoing concept of pursuing, chasing after justice, it's definitely something to look forward to try to live by. So I think I'll bring what's very important to me, which is these teachings. Sometimes we have teachings from the Torah. If you know anything about Rabbinic Judaism, if you don't, then this is good for you to start learning about. Because I think sometimes non-Jews, particularly Christians, think that we live by the Torah, meaning we live by biblical law. And when we're not living by it, they're confused and they think that we're just not living Judaism properly or something. So to understand Rabbinic Judaism, it's 2,000 plus years of rabbinic exegesis of our sages, our rabbis, working through both written and oral law. There's been a whole oral tradition coming through Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, onward, passed down, that gets worked out through the Mishnah and the Babylonian Gemara, the Talmud, and also Jerusalem Talmud, and other rabbinic texts going on and on through the centuries. And we live those laws. We live the interpretation and the application of the oral and the written law through the majority of what our sages decide that we are living. And so there are some times where it's clear that we are grateful that we're not living biblical law. Why do I mean by that? For instance, when you have like a wayward son, and it has to be very wayward, okay? Like someone today that we probably would have to even call the police on and get help for. Not your son who just rebels in the regular kind of teenage way. But what happens in the Torah is that he's taken by the elders and he's stoned. We would not want that today. We don't agree with that. We don't live by that today. So one of the cases where, when I'm studying biblical law, that I do wish does apply are these laws concerning preparing the army and the warfare. So it is made very clear that before at least in the law and the biblical concept of war, right, that God is with Israel in battle, first of all, to really believe that and to know it. Israel, therefore, is not to fear the enemy. And two declarations have to be made before the military officers assume command of the troops, right? The priests themselves, the Kohanim, must remind the troops of God's presence and exhort them not to fear. This is very important. This is so foundational that we strengthen our children and our youth that we are sending off to war, who have agreed to put their lives on the line to save us and save our people and our land and our way of being and save Western civilization from basically radical jihadist Sharia law, a people that want to return to like the Ottoman Empire. So it's very important that we today strengthen, say that God is present with them, they are not to fear, to act like the Kohanim. Also, civilian officers must proclaim deferrals, right? For those potential soldiers who have critical personal activities. And so not only those, but also those who do fear, who cannot work past the fear, who cannot trust in God at that moment, and trust that God really will be in battle and take care of them, because we don't want their fear demoralizing the rest of the army. But the other cases that get a deferral are very important, right? There are those, for instance, who are engaged to be married but haven't married yet. There are even those that will come in the next Torah portion that have been married under a year, that they are to go and return to be with the bride and not serve, because the bride deserves a full year with her groom. There are those who have planted a vineyard but haven't completed the whole process and benefited from it, that they are to return and finish that full year of planting that beautiful vineyard. I'm trying to think what the third case is as I'm looking at my notes here. Where he hasn't harvested yet. This is where I brought back here. Oh, someone who's built a new home but hasn't dedicated it yet, that he is to go back, right, and dedicate his home before he can serve in the army. So why do I think these are so important? I particularly think the ones who are engaged to be married should return and marry, and they should be with their spouse for that first year. I don't think anyone should become a widow. We just learned of a soldier who was just murdered by Hezbollah in the north. He was just 2 weeks married. No woman or man should be a widow after 2 weeks of marriage. So I just think there's something very important to learn from Shoftim and from Devarim, from our ancestors and from God to apply to today, that we don't apply these laws. We don't live by this. Obviously, the young man, I call him a boy, he's like 19, 20, that should be at home with his spouse. And some people may argue, okay, well, maybe he rejected the deferral and she was also signed off on it. She was okay. She wanted him to go and fight. Whatever the story you might tell, which might be true. And the main thing that you hear today in Israel is, oh, we don't have enough soldiers. Everyone has to fight, even if they just got married or they are engaged and haven't married yet, or let alone have planted a vineyard and haven't harvested yet, or have built a house but haven't dedicated it. I just think there needs to be a place based on what our ancestors and God have taught us, place for deferral, even if it's based on fear also, right? Like even the people, the small minority who in their ignorance and arrogance refuse to enter service. In some ways, I agree that they shouldn't enter because they will demoralize their army. Why would we want to have someone come in and serve who has already tried to run away from that obligation and that service to God and to our people? So may we continue to not only learn from the Torah, from God and our ancestors, but also begin to apply it in cases where I just think it's so important and necessary. I don't think these are just here because that's the way it used to be. For instance, in the 2nd century BCE, according to the first book of Maccabees, Yehuda Maccabee ordered deferrals for the reasons mentioned here before battling the suicide Syrian forces, and exhorted the troops before battle with a speech in the spirit of what the Kohanim are supposed to do, giving them strength, saying God is with them and they are not to fear. They don't have to fear. So we see our ancestors applied this to give strength to our soldiers and also to find a time and place and an outlet for deferral. May we continue to learn from these teachings to strengthen us, strengthen our army, strengthen our people. Shoftim is here for a reason. We are to pursue justice. We have to pursue justice for our soldiers who are out there, right? Make sure we take care of them. Make sure we understand when it's just too much and they shouldn't serve right now. Make sure that those who don't want to serve or refusing shouldn't serve. You don't want to demoralize our army and our people. With that, we are going to enter our meditation today to really internalize this teaching. One that we could enter this very much with what I call, what the tradition of Mussar Mindfulness teaches, which is called judgment mind, right? We could enter a lot of judgment, negative judgment, especially towards those who seek to either cause us harm or suffering, or those who avoid service and responsibility to caring for our people, doing what's necessary, to those who we think are not leading the way that we expect or want. All sorts of judgment mind. And so what does Tzedek Teodov teach that we're going to enter this meditation with is this concept of recognizing when we have judgment mind. See it operating, see its voice. What does it say to us? We often have a certain record player that it says the same thing over and over. My voice is different from your voice. We call that the Yetzer Hara, which means evil inclination, but I like to just call it what my teacher, Christina Feldman, calls it, like this inclination to go against our values, inclination to cause harm and suffering towards ourselves and others, inclination to do that which is that we don't really want to do, right? That will just lead to greed, ill will, and delusion. So we're going to practice becoming aware of the judgment mind and then bringing compassion. Compassion to ourselves that we might be getting stuck in the judgment. Compassion to our fellow citizens, Am Yisrael, our people, our amazing young men and women out there serving on our behalf. We're in the middle of Sukkot, where the Shekhinah, God is really here protecting and being with us. And what is our most joyful holiday? Now, joyful being a verb, joy, to cause joy to others through our generosity, through our sharing meals with others, through caring for, through causing the sukkah, the shekhinah, the beautiful protective system, that we continue to offer that to each other, to our amazing soldiers, to everyone, right? To strengthen us on this path and journey as we are in the middle of Sukkot and Chol HaMoed. Okay, let's enter. I'm going to come to the edge of my seat. If you want to be lying down, you can, or walking back and forth, going nowhere in particular. Or if you want to stand, a kind of a strong mountain pose, that will also work. And I invite you to sit up straight, really strong spine, where you really feel the base of the skull sitting on your spine, where you're simultaneously awake and alert and at ease. Right? That beautiful combination. And when we take the inhalation this time, I welcome you to close your eyes if you feel safe and comfortable, although otherwise lower your gaze. And on the inhalation, we're going to notice how many seconds pass. So if I said inhalation 1, 2, I want to try to extend my exhalation to 4, double the amount of the inhalation. So inhalation and exhale. You'll hear me exhaling out of my mouth, really relaxing the whole nervous system. Inhalation, exhale. Feeling the shoulders beginning to soften and lower. This last one, inhalation and exhale. Fully arriving, inviting yourself fully here at ease. Head, heart, body, spirit, soul. Recognizing the gift of oxygen and breathing. The hakarat of awakening to the good and giving thanks. You are alive. You've been given this moment by God, another moment, another day to be of benefit to others. What a gift. What a gift that you have found us and are here creating community, taking refuge in the Vad and the Sangha of Mussar Mindfulness and the Institute for Holiness. What a gift. What a gift of our teachers and ancestors, to God, for bringing us to this moment. that we may really jump into Shoftim and learn from it and apply it to our lives today. So here we enter. We enter under the canopy of the Sukkah, of the Shekhinah, of Hashem. And as you begin to settle, bringing your loving attention to your thoughts, noticing what is here, if anything. Noticing if you're reminiscing about anything in the past that came before the session. Perhaps you're in planning mind, thinking about what you're going to do after or what you need to do. Bringing your attention to your judging mind. What judgment have you been having over this war, over the leadership, over the institutions of shared power, and the rule of law in Israel and in the world? Become intimate with your record player. What your voice says to you, how it's unique to you and your curriculum. Only your voice knows how to trigger you, to entrance you, to listen to it, to take that ride of judgment, right? The comparing mind, the judgment mind. Notice the emotions attached to the judging mind. Any strong emotions of ill will or hatred, delusion, greed, attachment. Once you tap into really practicing mindfulness of those emotions attached to the judgment mind, bringing your attention to the sensations attached to those emotions, the sensations in the body. So I'll share one of my judgment mind as a model for you. Sometimes I lose my practice and awareness of my trust in God and in our leadership, and probably even in the faith of our allies and the rest of the world. And I immediately go into frustration and criticism that even can rise to levels of anger. And it'll be kind of a bickering, dissatisfaction, discontentment, as if I know better. And I will feel those emotions, discontentment, frustration, judgment, and anger in my chest. There will be shallow breathing in my shoulders. I can actually feel pain, discomfort. I'll notice a knot in my belly. And one of the key ones is a total tightness in my hips and my low back, as if I can't be mobile. These are all gifts from God as a sign to say to me, hey, Rabbi Chasya, it's time to practice. It's time to wake up. This is your curriculum. Bring that compassion, that self-compassion right now, as you would to a best friend, to that judgment, to that judging mind. That loving voice of saying, I understand, it's hard. Immediately, even when I say, I understand it's hard, I notice my shoulders begin to fall and relax a little. My low back begins to lessen its grip. I can begin to take a deep breath. I recognize the shared humanity that others are just as deeply fearful and frustrated and angry and having judgment mind. Everyone thinking that they know best. And I can even bring a smile to that. Recognizing I'm not alone. So many of us frustrated, powerless, trying to feel some power through that frustration and anger and through the story of the voice that I know better. I can tell them what they should be doing. This is what they should be doing. Bringing that sense of humor, that level of humility of anava, that's not my place. I am one person. And yes, I'm obligated to use my voice as an equal citizen, to vote, to affect policy. And then I must withdraw in the sense of recognizing I'm only one person. There's only so much I can do. We're here to begin the task, not finish it. So once we work through those steps of that humor, that self-compassion, that this is hard, we might even rub ourselves, recognizing the level of difficulty, recognizing the shared humanity that others are going through exactly the same thing. And bringing that loving nurturing now. And for some of us, non-identification, knowing that it's a non-self, it's not us. We're just caught up in reactivity, right? Reactivity. It's just energy. It arises, has a certain shelf life, and will pass. I don't need to identify with it. I don't need to practice denial and try to push it away. I can just be with it, knowing that this too shall pass. A real loving nurturing that this is hard. And I will take this one day at a time. And then we check in with ourselves, right? Check in how the tummy is doing, how the hips and low back are, how the shoulders and the chest are. What a gift. What a gift to be handed this path and these practices to share together, to strengthen us, to move out of the reactivity so that we can be present to love one another. Love as a verb that strengthens us with generosity and compassion and gratitude. Spending this last minute in silence, I will pull us out of our meditation. After some brief time with ourselves as souls. When you're ready, if it is your practice to bow, give yourself a bow to God, to Hashem, and to the ancestors for this practice, to your teachers, to the Torah, and to the Dharma, to the Institute for Holiness for bringing us and gathering us in this sacred Zoom room, live streaming podcast, however you're joining us. Gently and slowly open your eyes if they're not open, allowing the light of God to filter back in. God bless you all for practicing and arriving today. Today's awakening, TORAH Mussar Mindfulness, is actually sponsored by and in honor of a wonderful program and teaching that the Institute wants to bring the light, which is sponsored by Montana, I hope I'm saying the name correctly, Montana Tucker, who is apparently involved with social media, someone famous maybe from United States, but has decided to do some excellent work on a program called 10/7 Children, meaning October 7th children, where she's met with the children survivors of October 7th who either were kidnapped and returned or had survived the genocide or had their families murdered in front of them. And she interviews them. And why do I point this out? Because if you want to really be in touch with future generation who has been caused such harm and suffering, but has such the light of God shining through them, that we need to take and strengthen and love and heal over time. These are these children. So I encourage you to look for the program 10/7 Children by Montana Tucker. It's definitely shown on Instagram, probably YouTube or live streaming, not sure, but seek it out. And we're grateful for the sponsorship and donations in honor of that today. So thank you for coming and being present with the teaching. We are moving on to Kitetse very soon, God willing, to get through this. And again, I'm Rabbi Chasya Uriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Kehilat Mussar Mindfulness. Thank you again for joining today, which is the 17th of Tishrei. God bless.